What's up, everybody? With Charles on this world. Going ready to give my reaction to Labyrinth by Randall Sullivan. It's a really good book. Going to delve into this is the aftermath of what happened after Tupac was shot that fateful night in 1996 in September. Let's go ahead and play it, guys, and we'll come back with my reaction. Thanks a lot. Thumbs up, button. Subscribe to Charles on this world. Appreciate it.
They made him get down on his knees anyway, as ambulances and cars sped to the scene, which within moments had become a maelstrom of flashing lights and shrieking sirens. Many in the huge crowd rushed forward and tried to retrieve mementos from the BMW, tearing off side view mirrors, wire-rimmed hubcaps, and door handles. The cops screamed at them to get back and threatened to arrest everyone in sight. By the time paramedics delivered Tupac to Las Vegas's University Medical Center, he had lost a lot of blood. A team of surgeons removed his shattered left lung that night, then operated again the next morning. Doctors gave him a 50-50 chance of survival, then when Tupac regained consciousness, said the odds might be better than that. Outside the hospital, the Outlaw Immortals held prayer vigils with the rapper's fans, who drove media photographers away whenever they tried to snap pictures. In the hospital lobby, a teenage girl chanted lyrics from Tupac's All Eyes on Me album, 5 shots and they still couldn't kill me. Outside Tupac's room, Jesse Jackson and Minister Tony Muhammad, head of the Nation of Islam's LA chapter, comforted the rapper's family. Jackson was said to be a close friend of Afeni Shakur's, but didn't sound much like it when he delivered a sermon the next day at a black church in Las Vegas. Before you condemn Tupac for calling women bitches and hoes in his music, you need to understand and know about the background of this man, Jackson told both parishioners and the media in attendance. He was raised by a mama who was on crack. He didn't have a real mama. Don't condemn him for talking about his mama and for talking about women. The man the Las Vegas police were looking for was Suge Knight, who had left town despite being asked not to. When Suge was spotted at Death Row's offices in Beverly Hills on September 9th, David Kenner promised the Vegas police that Mr. Knight would appear for questioning the next day. But Suge never showed. He did arrive at the Las Vegas PD's homicide headquarters on the evening of the 11th, however, accompanied by Kenner, David Chessoff, and a third attorney. It was the only interview the Las Vegas police would ever conduct with Suge, and afterward the disgruntled detectives let reporters know that Knight had not been helpful in solving the case. Less than 48 hours later, at 4:04 p.m. on Friday the 13th, 25-year-old Tupac Shakur was pronounced dead from respiratory failure and cardiopulmonary arrest. Suge arrived at the hospital in a black Lexus moments after the announcement was made. When he stepped out of the car, the crowd went quiet. Reporters noted that the supposed gunshot wound on his head was barely visible. Upstairs, Suge spoke briefly with Tupac's family, then walked out the front entrance with a cigar between his teeth, not 10 minutes after his arrival. Suge would discover his own vulnerability only 4 days later when the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office announced that it was removing Larry Longo as the prosecutor on the case involving Suge's assault of the Stanley brothers at the Solar Record Studios back in 1992. Word that Longo's daughter had signed a recording contract with Death Row was leaked to the media, and almost every statement that issued from the Longo family during the next few days would be met with derision. The most quoted comment was one Longo had made a month after Suge cut his deal for a suspended sentence. "I have never seen a guy transform as much as this guy has since he was first booked," the prosecutor had told reporters. "It's remarkable." More remarkable to most of the media was the insistence of Longo's son, Frank, that he and David Kenner had independently negotiated the deal that made his 18-year-old sister, Gina, the first and only white performer signed by Death Row Records. Gina Longo defended herself by saying, "I'm no Milli Vanilli. The reason I'm on Death Row has nothing to do with my dad." Suge, meanwhile, managed to keep a straight face when he said that Gina had the voice of Billie Holiday, only in a white girl's body. If anyone out there believed that, he was hard to find, especially in the district attorney's office. When Longo reported to work on the morning of October 25th, his superiors told him to go home. Reporters who now knew that Suge Knight was living in the Longo's Malibu colony home peppered the DA's office with phone calls and questions. Lawrence Longo would be fired from his job before the end of the year. The
Wow.
even worse news for Suge was that the attack on Orlando Anderson at the MGM Grand had been captured on videotape, and the DA's office had decided to argue that Knight's participation in the beating was a violation of his probation. At almost the same moment, the judge who had agreed to Suge's rather unusual grant of probation, John Outerkirk, was replaced by the much tougher Stephen Schuliger. Suge already had been sent to LA County Jail after failing a court-ordered drug test 3 days earlier. A hearing on a motion by the district attorney's office to revoke his probation was scheduled for February of 1997. Suge's image only darkened during the next few weeks. On November 6, 1996, Knight was the subject of a report by ABC's Primetime Live that began, "Some say he's the most dangerous man in music." Though the ABC report later would be discredited because of its reliance upon the exaggerated claims of Vanilla Ice, plenty of damage was done in the short term, as investigations of Suge by both news organizations and law enforcement agencies seemed to crop up on an almost weekly basis. The most compelling media reports involved claims that startup money for Death Row Records had been supplied not only by Michael Harris, but also by another notorious drug kingpin, Ricardo Crockett. Suge had been stopped by police in Beverly Hills with a gun in his glove compartment that had been purchased illegally by an associate of Crockett's. Though convicted of transporting the gun across state lines, Suge won a grant of probation in federal court. At the same time, however, it was reported that the U.S. Justice Department had organized a multi-agency task force to investigate claims that Suge and Death Row were trafficking in both guns and drugs. The really bad news was that Steve Cantrock had become a federal witness. Cantrock worked for the conservative New York-based firm Coopers and Lybrand, but was known as one of the accounting trade's most colorful figures, a hippie-turned-hustler who enjoyed socializing with clients like the members of hard rock bands Slaughter and White Zombie. He and Knight had seemed to hit it off at first, but they began to bicker during the summer of 1996 over Suge's suspicion that Cantrock was skimming money. And when American Express filed a lawsuit claiming that Suge Knight, David Kenner, and Kenner's wife had run up more than $1.5 million in unpaid bills, Suge and Kenner said that the expenses had been incurred by their rogue accountant, Steve Cantrock. Things came to a head at a meeting in the backyard of a San Fernando Valley home owned by singer Michele. From county jail, Suge told reporters the meeting was Cantrock's idea and described what happened this way. "After I caught him stealing millions of dollars and confronted him, he started crying. I said, 'Okay, Steve, don't get so bent out of shape.'" Cantrock's account was considerably different. Suge showed up for the meeting accompanied by not only David Kenner, but also several of his blood henchmen, Cantrock said, then began the meeting by stating, "All right, cut the bullshit, Steve. How much did you steal from me?" Before he could respond, Cantrock said Suge doubled him over with a punch to the solar plexus. As he sank to the ground sobbing, Cantrock said, he heard Suge tell someone that he wanted a confession. David Kenner produced a handwritten document moments later and passed it to Suge, who handed it to him, Cantrock said, and told him he better sign it. Convinced he would die if he didn't, Cantrock said he wrote his signature. The accountant promptly disappeared. A security guard was posted in the lobby at the Los Angeles office of Coopers and Lybrand, where receptionists told callers that Cantrock was away on stress leave. Word swiftly spread that Cantrock and his family had fled the country, but by late December of 1996, the Los Angeles Times was reporting that Cantrock had become a federal witness and would supply the U.S. Justice Department with reams of documents detailing Death Row's financial dealings over the last 3 years. Even as Suge hired Milton Grimes to represent him in the criminal racketeering investigation being conducted by the feds, he was forced to defend himself against a civil racketeering lawsuit filed by Afeni Shakur that accused Knight, Kenner, and Death Row of a pattern of fraud and deception in their dealings with her late son. Suge answered by claiming that, in fact, the Shakur estate owed him millions for monies advanced to Tupac and his family. Afeni asked reporters how it was possible that Tupac's albums could generate more than $60 million in revenues for Death Row, while the artist himself received less than $1 million in royalties. After American Express filed its lawsuit against Death Row, creditors came out of the woodwork. One lawsuit asked for $75 million and sought to have the record company put into receivership. Suge's mentor, Dick Griffey, joined forces with the DOC, meanwhile, to file a $125 million breach of promise lawsuit against Death Row.
Damn.
More ominous for Suge was the claim by Los Angeles Deputy District Attorney Bill Hodgman that Suge should be forced to serve his 9-year prison sentence for the assault on the Stanley brothers. The MGM Grand's videotape of the Orlando Anderson beating was the strongest evidence against Suge, Hodgman told the court. At Knight's bail hearing, David Kenner argued that the tape showed Suge had not been a part of the assault, and in fact, had tried to prevent others from attacking Anderson. When Judge Chuliger looked at the tape, he agreed with Hodgman. It looks like he's trying to get a last lick in, that's what it looks like to me.
Exactly.
Moving on Kenner's request for bail, Chuliger said, he's had every reason to believe things would work out. No one said enough's enough, that's it. This judge would. Bail was denied.
Ooh.
While Suge sat in his cell at county jail, word spread on the street that Knight had bought out the jail commissary in order to distribute gifts to the other Bloods and buy protection. Death Row was still a force in the music business, but for how long, no one knew. The label would put out 2 of the 3 biggest-selling rap albums of 1996 while Suge awaited his court hearing. First came Tupac's posthumous Machiavelli, followed shortly by Snoop Dogg's The Dogfather. Unfortunately for Suge, however, Snoop was the only real star still signed to Death Row, and he wanted to leave the label in order to save his life. Snoop presently owns and oftentimes travels in an armored van equipped with gun ports. Sharitha Knight would claim in a lawsuit that accused Snoop of failing to pay agents commissions of $1.6 million during the time her Death Row subsidiary Nightlife served as his manager. Death threats have been reported against the defendant. The defendant's life appears in jeopardy. In other words, an LA Weekly writer observed, Sharitha Knight wants her money before Snoop gets shot.
Damn.
Snoop, meanwhile, was already making plans for a life after Death Row. And during the next few months, he would record cameos with nearly a dozen singers and rappers from other labels. He also began talking about a reunion project with Dr. Dre. Snoop can't talk on it. Nobody can, really. But everybody's trying to get away from Death Row. His father, Vernal Vernado, would advise another Los Angeles reporter. When Suge showed up in court for his hearing in February of 1997, he was not wearing one of his famous red suits, but rather the blue jumpsuit of a Los Angeles County Jail inmate. His most important witness also wore blue, Southside Crip Orlando Anderson. Anderson, who had cursed Suge bitterly after the beating, now said that Knight played the peacemaker when Tupac Shakur and 7 others attacked him at the MGM Grand. "I seen him pulling people off me," said Anderson, who described Suge as the only one yelling, "Stop this stuff." A pair of Compton police officers, however, told the court that Anderson's story had been quite different when they interviewed him in October of 1996. He basically said he had been jumped by some Bloods, also Suge and Tupac, one of them explained. A Las Vegas police detective said Anderson had told him that Tupac and Suge beat him up pretty good. And the MGM Grand security manager told Judge Chuliger that she had seen Suge kick Anderson 3 times. Kenner's answer was a man who said he choreographed fight scenes for action movies and was good friends with Steven Seagal. He had watched the videotape 100 times, said the man, who testified that a frame-by-frame breakdown had convinced him Suge's hands were in a defensive posture. He's trying to stop the activity from going any further.
Oh my God.
Judge Chuliger clearly wasn't buying it and ruled that Suge was an active participant in the attack on Orlando Anderson. Before the judge could issue a final ruling, however, David Kenner produced a psychiatrist who was being paid $250 an hour to tell the court that he strongly disagreed with a probation report that claimed Mr. Knight was criminally oriented. Mr. Knight was a socially active and concerned citizen of the black community who displayed neither a propensity for violence nor what he would describe as antisocial behavior, the doctor said. He's not a dangerous person.
All right.
Kenner also called witnesses who testified that Suge was an advocate of black citizens who had distributed Thanksgiving turkeys and Christmas toys to the poor people of Compton while an inmate at county jail. Suge was a compassionate man, declared Danny J. Blakewell of the Brotherhood Crusade. Another witness noted the presence in court of C. Dolores Tucker, who believed that Suge could use his prominence to steer young black men away from gangs. This was a distinctly ironic moment, given that Suge had almost single-handedly destroyed Tucker's reputation, calling her, among other things, a hoax who claimed the title doctor on the basis of honorary degrees from obscure colleges. Tucker was presently the target of a death row lawsuit that accused her of having an economic motive for her public criticism of gangsta rap. Still, the woman sat nodding in court as one Raheem Jenkins told the court that if Dr. Tucker could forgive Suge Knight, then the judge, too, should embrace him. Suge himself took the stand to tell Judge Schuliger, "I definitely don't want to do my life behind bars. But if it's more positive for the community by me being incarcerated, I'm willing to sacrifice myself." He thanked C. Dolores Tucker and said she had helped him come to a decision that he would never allow the word nigger to be used on another Death Row Records release.
Okay.
Bill Hodgman replied with a recitation of highlights from Suge's criminal history: a plea of guilty to battery with a deadly weapon in Las Vegas during 1987, pleas of guilty to separate charges of battery in Beverly Hills and Hollywood in 1990, and a plea of guilty to disturbing the peace in Van Nuys that same year. A conviction in 1991 when he gave a false name after being arrested in possession of a concealed weapon. Another conviction, this one for assault with a deadly weapon, in Las Vegas in 1992, plus 1995 convictions for conspiracy to illegally possess a firearm and for assault with a firearm. Judge Schuliger ordered that Suge should be detained by the California Department of Corrections for a 90-day diagnostic examination, then returned to his courtroom in May to be sentenced to state prison.
Wow.
2 weeks later, Biggie Smalls was shot dead in Los Angeles, and from the first day, investigators let it be known that they considered Suge Knight the prime suspect.
That's crazy, man. Wow. That is insane. What do I think about this? See, this stuff I didn't know. I didn't know that they went that. I didn't know that because C. Dolores Tucker did not like Suge Knight, and then she came to his court, his trial. He was paying people off to get out. He was trying to get out of that situation. He probably paid. I know he paid Orlando Anderson to speak on his defense like $60,000. So he probably gave her 60 grand too. He was trying to get out that mess. He was really trying to get out that mess. It's funny because you can see in the video. You go back and look at the video at the MGM Hotel. You can see him clearly kicking homeboy, you know. But anyway, what do y'all think about this video, man? This is from the book Labyrinth by Randall Sullivan. Let me know what y'all think about what you just heard in the comments. Subscribe to my channel, Charles Ornaz World. Thumbs up button. I appreciate you guys watching. Take care.